right, hi everybody. Another super exciting installment of Sociology on the video. So thanks for bearing with me. It was great meeting you all on Thursday. What this is a three-part little video series about the history of sociology to get us ready for our conversation about theory for sociology on Tuesday. So our plan today is, we're going to talk about where sociology came from. We're going to talk about the founders of sociology, and then we're going to give just a quick introduction to sociological theory. So again, this is going to be a three-part video series. Please watch all of these before class on Tuesday so you'll get a lot more out of it. So, real quick though, a little bit of review of what we talked about on Thursday night. Sociological imagination. Right? Remember, it's not a thing. You can't buy a box of sociological imagination at Target. That'd be weird, right? It's really a perspective. It's a way of looking at the world to understand, why people do what they do, understand behavior. I really think of it as a tool, right? It's literally a tool that sociologists use to really take, to understand where people are coming from, right? And remember, biography, sort of the individual explanations for behavior, history, much more the social explanations for behavior. So it's really about the interaction between these two. All right, so what? Why should you care about sociological imagination beyond the fact that it's going to be on the exam? Because it's actually kind of useful, right? It's useful in your own life. It's useful in trying to understand, right, political behavior, your friends' behavior, because it helps us figure out whether we're dealing with what we call a personal trouble or a public issue. Personal trouble is kind of what it sounds like, right? A personal trouble, the problem lies with you, right? You or a particular group. So if the problem lies with you, then the solution lies with you, right? You have control over that. But oftentimes things are actually and also public issues. The problem's way bigger than you, right? And you alone cannot fix it. Regardless of politicians on either side of what they say, a public issue takes a much larger social solution, not just an individual one. So let's watch a little video to kind of give us a sense of what we mean by personal troubles and public issues and how that connects to sociological imagination.
We all have imagination. It lets us be creative and envision life in a new way. But did you know that there is something called the sociological imagination? In sociology, to understand one's own self, we must understand the relationship between self and society. The concept of the sociological imagination was presented in 1959 by C. Wright Mills in his famous book of the same title, where he states, "The sociological imagination enables us to grasp history and biography and the relations between the two within society. That is its task and its promise. The concept is to understand the distinction between a person's troubles and public issues. At what point does something such as unemployment or trouble finding a job shift from being a personal problem to a public issue? If one person is unemployed, that is a personal problem. If 1 million out of 10 million people cannot find employment, that is a public issue." According to Mills, there is an intricate relationship between the individual and society. Whatever a person does is not just because it is of their own choice or personal preference. A behavior as simple as exercise can be looked at from multiple perspectives. For example, exercise can provide health benefits such as lowering blood pressure, maintaining a healthy weight, or send endorphins to help alleviate stress. It can be a social activity such as taking a walk with a group of friends or playing on a sports team. It can increase productivity at work and benefit the company. And it can inspire communities to take action by building walking, biking, and running trails. So, while exercise benefits the individual, it also has a larger purpose in the social world. A person benefits from being surrounded by a community that encourages exercise and makes it easier for a person to do so, but it can also have the opposite effect if a person is surrounded by a community that does not emphasize exercise. Practically any personal behavior can be looked at with a sociological imagination. Let's take this and apply it to the very public issue of obesity in the United States. Or is it a personal trouble? Tough question. Let's figure it out. From the personal perspective, we all need to eat to live, and there are many reasons other than necessity that we gather around food. Celebrations such as birthdays, weddings, funerals, job promotions, and holidays, or just socializing with friends often involves food. What we eat and how much we eat is within our personal control. Or is it? Let's say a person belongs to a family that often gets together for large gatherings. At these gatherings, there are often lots of burgers, chips, cookies, and desserts. Choices are limited for low-fat or healthy options. After eating, the family gathers around a fire, and not much is done in the way of activities such as walking, running, or even a family-friendly game of football. Over time, one realizes that these gatherings are contributing to their growing waistline. Well, we can say that this is a personal trouble. That person is making a conscious choice on what they put into their body and are in control of what they eat. While this may be true to some extent, is it all within a person's control? Our behavior is influenced by others, and in cases such as family gatherings, how might the family react if one chooses not to eat what others are eating? Social acceptance is important, even among our family. We also tend to like similar foods of the people around us. So we could say that we all make personal choices and are responsible for our own behavior, but what we eat and how we spend our time does not happen in a vacuum. Not that we blame family for choices, but that choices are influenced by the people around us. Let's take this a step further and ask ourselves what else may influence a person becoming obese, and when does a personal problem turn into a larger social issue? According to the Center for Disease Control, approximately 35% of the United States adult population is considered obese. That percentage bumps up to 69% when we consider all adults who are also overweight. Social structures that contribute to obesity include food deserts, which are areas of the United States that do not have access to healthy, whole, and fresh foods and can be found in both urban and rural areas. These are places where it is difficult to grow healthy food locally, and there is little to no access to local markets that would carry such items. Then there are government subsidies. Research shows that less than 1% of subsidies by the United States government goes towards the production of fresh fruits and vegetables, while the majority of the subsidies are given for meat, dairy, and grain production. This means that prices of healthy foods are significantly more expensive than the prices of unhealthy foods. We are also biologically driven to get the biggest energy bang for our buck. So if we have $5 in our pockets and are hungry, we are more likely going to purchase $5 in fast food rather than $5 for a bag of apples. While these are not the only social structures that contribute to obesity as a social problem, they give a clear picture of how society contributes to this. And of course, this creates more social issues. Currently, we spend approximately $147 billion on illnesses and diseases related to obesity. This creates even more issues when the cost of health care and health insurance increases because of obesity-related illness and disease. So we can say that society influences a person's behavior, and that person's behavior contributes to a social issue. What is another issue that you have typically described as a personal trouble that also has social factors that contribute to it? How do social structures such as government, economy, education, and religion contribute to social problems? And how does the sociological imagination help us examine human behavior?
Okay, so maybe not Oscar worthy, but hopefully kind of helpful, right? So again, their example of obesity, obviously a personal trouble, right? We make choices, we make decisions, but we don't make them in a vacuum, as she mentioned, right? There's larger things going on in the world that contribute to our obesity rates. Quite a few that she didn't mention as well. So useful, right? When we're thinking about, is this my problem or is this our problem, or could it be a little bit of both? Okay, so we're going to make an awkward transition here from sociological imagination to the history of sociology, right? Where the heck did sociology come from? But there's actually a connection, right? If we want to understand where this idea of sociological imagination came from, we need to look at where did sociology come from. And interestingly enough, it was born out of the Industrial Revolution. Now, we can spend weeks talking about the Industrial Revolution. I don't want to do that, so we're going to do the short version. Right? The Industrial Revolution happened around the turn of the century, and it really refers to this economic shift, right? We went from an agrarian or agricultural-based economy, right, where our economy was based on growing things, to a manufacturing-based economy, right, where our economy is no longer based on growing things, it's based on making things. And the invention of the steam engine is really responsible for getting this Industrial Revolution going, starting in Europe, made its way to the United States. And the big difference here is now because of automation, because of machines, we can make things a lot faster with a lot fewer people. Now, a lot of people are like, what? What's the connection between sociology and the Industrial Revolution? Isn't that have to do with just economics? And yeah, obviously we're talking about an economic shift because of this technology, but we're also talking about a profound cultural and social shift as well. So let's watch another little video to give you a sense of what we're talking about here.
In the late 1700s, most people worked in the fields on land they did not own. Those who owned the land, called aristocrats, lived refined lives in elegant manor houses. Servants raised their children and did their housework. The landowners and the people who worked for them depended upon each other. It was a system that had existed for centuries. In towns across England and the United States, a series of extraordinary innovations would alter the way people lived and worked for the next 150 years. Inventors had found new ways to harness nature's energy. They built new kinds of machines powered by water, steam, and coal. The new machines replaced hand-powered tools. They did the same work, only cheaper and faster. Much of the work was done outside the home, in specially designed buildings, the first factories. Mechanization began in the textile mills of England, where one machine attached to a spinning wheel could do the work of 50 people. Fuel, clothing, and food all became more affordable. With the development of locomotives and steamboats, manufactured goods could now be sold halfway around the world. Families moved from the villages of their ancestors to new industrial towns. And a new class of people emerged, workers who produced goods. Industrialists, the people who owned the factories, employed hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. And they made enormous profits in their industrial centers. But while the Industrial Revolution brought wealth to some and jobs for others, it came with a price tag. Pollution from coal-powered factories turned the cities black. Lack of housing created the first urban slums. And the demand for more and more goods and higher profits brought the exploitation of workers, including children. Some of the worst conditions were seen in the textile mills of New England. In the 1830s, a 10-year-old mill girl described her life.
We were paid $2 a week, and the working hours of all the girls extended from 5 o'clock in the morning till 7 in the evening, with 1.5 hours for breakfast and for dinner.
It was the hiring of children, some as young as 5 years old, throughout the 1800s and early 1900s, that outraged the public. Workers and reformers protested. They formed unions and associations and fought for government regulations to limit the workday and protect children.
All right, so you get the idea, right? So the Industrial Revolution, again, obviously an economic shift, but had profound influence on society and culture as well, right? You notice, for example, that people moved from rural, farming communities to these big giant cities, right? All crammed into these not particularly lovely apartments, right? So you had this just sort of squishing of culture and ideas, in some way a good thing, but also not such a great thing, right? All the health problems associated with that. The Industrial Revolution also, for example, changed the institution of marriage, right? Prior to the Industrial Revolution, your family, your community had a lot of control over who you got to marry and who you didn't, right? If you came home with a sweetie that they didn't really like, your family can basically say, well, we're not going to give you that property you need, right? Because farming was the way to make a living. After the Industrial Revolution now, you can tell your family, forget you, right? Me and my sweetie are running off to the city and getting another China job because we have all these new types of jobs, right? So the institution of marriage really, really changed. You had all this social and political conflict and tension, right? People with different ideas, different ways of doing things coming into contact with one another. Introduction to different ideas, right? And then also this profound shift in the ability of religion to control people's lives. in a small town where everybody was, the same religious beliefs, that had a lot of control over your life. But all of a sudden you're coming into contact with different ideas and different beliefs. So the institution of a religion really starts to change, right? Our ideas about childhood start to change. You have all these children in these factories doing really intense work, as you notice, for 8-10 hours a day, getting fingers lopped off and hands lopped off. So you get this sort of invention of childhood. Profound changes, right? So why are we talking about it? Well, all these founders that we're going to talk about here of sociology are living while this is happening and watching this change and going, holy cow, this is going to forever change how people live their lives and the choices they make, and we need to study it. And we really need a new discipline to study it, because the existing ones at the time just weren't equipped to deal with this new thing, the Industrial Revolution. So that's really the connection, right? How did this seemingly economic shift really change the way people live their lives pretty much forever? So they all agreed, yeah, we need to study it. But all these founders did not agree on sort of how we need to move forward in sociology. Some argued that our entire job as sociologists was simply to study the effects, right? Don't get involved, don't try to fix anything, just study the effects of the Industrial Revolution. Other founders, as we'll meet, say, yeah, we should study it, but we should also try to find ways to fix these problems that were a result of the Industrial Revolution, right? The exploitation of workers, unsafe living conditions, right? Social inequality. So you have this tension between these founders of sociology, between just studying society and all trying to fix the social problems of society. All right, so we're going to take a break here. Our next video is going to be looking at our founders of sociology.